a J series can get you to 300 horsepower on a budget.
Welcome to the Blind Apex Podcast, where amateur club racers tune in to get faster.
This episode is brought to you by Deechworks Fuel Systems. Go to deechworks.com to fuel your passion. This episode, it's what happens when you have a podcast, you overthink things, and you hang out with a bunch of enablers. I'm going to talk about the Honda J series with my guest, but mostly if you want to blame another "what is this engine doing" podcast, you can blame Ryan Bradfield, Eric from Rad Potential, and then Mario from OccamsRacers.com for being like-minded and then also enablers. Joining me, J Series Guru, CEO of Power Rev Racing, aka P2R. And I've been using their Fulonic spacers on my K series for a long time, but Sean Yearwood, welcome to the podcast, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've seen like the P2R logo. For how long now? Well over a decade, I think. How long have you guys been in this J series game, and how did it start?
So, P2R was officially started in 2003. Mm-hmm. I actually went to college for 3D design, and I had a 97 EK Civic. And at the time, we had first did a B16 swap in it. My brother helped me out. We did it in my mom's garage. And I left off to go to college. And in College Town, we were street racing pretty much every day. My whole drive to school and back, it was always somebody to race. It was really fun times. And when I left college, I did an accelerated program. So I got a bachelor's degree in under 2 years. Mm-hmm. And when I came back, we wanted to go heavier into street racing, and I wanted to start my brand, and came up with Power Rev Racing. And then a buddy of mine was like, well, let's abbreviate it with the P2R. So it was like, all right, P2R. And so when I made things legal, I just did P2R Power Rev Racing, because people knew me by Power Rev Racing or they knew me by P2R. So I just made it all one. And I always like to be different, so I went and did a H22 swap. At the time, H22s weren't popular at all, but I did it because I wanted to have the biggest engine available. Mm-hmm. After that, the K series swap started to get popular, and I didn't really want to follow along the K series route. I wanted to see what was the biggest motor Honda had available. If they had a V8, I would have probably been down the V8 hole, but they had the V6, which is J series. So in 2005, I had a 91 Civic that I picked up, and we started working on J swapping it. Nothing was available, of course, so we built the motor mounts, we custom made the axles, and I didn't know a lot about the engines then, so a lot of the things we did, some things were crazy. We had the injectors sticking out of the top of the intake manifold because we didn't make the intake manifold spacer then, and I didn't know that like the SUVs that Honda makes, like a Honda Odyssey, would have had a big intake spacer in it, and we couldn't fit injectors under the manifold. So I put the injectors at the top of the manifold. So I did a lot of crazy stuff with it. It was really cool. It got a lot of attention on HondaTech.com.
Yeah. Honda-Tech. Everybody's been there at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, it got a lot of traction there. And then from there, I just started working on the J series. Every day we started developing parts. At the time, we used to get everything machined outside. So I was trying to use my degree and, model parts in CAD and send them over to a local machine shop who would make me certain items. And just from there, just continued to evolve and learn more about the engines. And here we are almost 21 or so years later. And I think I know just about everything I can know about the J series.
Good. I need to learn more because I have bad ideas all the time. So I'm always looking for another bad streetcar idea, But okay. So let's get into the basics, right? So I feel like the J series has been in just about everything. And then recently you guys helped somebody build a motor or built the motor for somebody who's putting it in a P-51 Mustang plane.
Yeah, that's actually one of very unique project. They're replica P-51 planes.
Okay.
They're actually called the T-51. This company was called Titan Aircraft, was actually already putting J series in these planes for quite some time, and they were pretty much getting junkyard engines and they were rebuilding them, and they have a whole kit for it. They have a gearbox adapter that goes to their prop shaft, and I guess they were coming up to that time where they started to need to do rebuilds.
Mm-hmm.
So one of his customers reached out to me because he saw my YouTube channel and he had liked the work that we do. So I built a set of cylinder heads for him, and he was really happy with the work. So he put me in contact with the owner of Titan Aircraft, and he came by my facility and checked out what we were doing, and he was super excited because I have over 300 brand new assembled Honda short blocks. I have probably 400 to 500 brand new Honda cylinder heads. We essentially bought a whole Honda warehouse of discontinued J series parts. So I have blocks and heads, all brand new. And since they were putting those planes together with these engines, they were super excited that I can sell them a brand new engine rather than them going to the junkyard and trying to rebuild and make an engine look new. So at this point, I've done 3 of those aircraft engines.
Uh-huh.
And
that's wild to me. Like, if you want to talk reliability, you talk about it when you're flying. Okay. If you want the engine, if you need a reliable engine, that's where you need it, because you don't want to just come falling out of the sky, right? It's one thing.
Yeah.
It's one thing to be stuck on the side of the highway. It's another thing to be falling out of the sky, right? So I think when I saw that, I was like, man, the J series must really be stout if they're willing to put it in planes, right?
Yeah, the J series, it's so widely used, to be honest. It's funny because in the drag racing world, the J series isn't used that much yet.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty much everywhere else, it's used a lot. Like, as you said, it's done in the airplane. We've used those motors in a lot of watercraft situations. I actually build the engines for H2O Amphibious, which is an amphibious vehicle that drives on land and water. It's used in a lot of road racing. It's used in the Le Mans LMP2 car. They run a J35 motor that they de-stroke.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a 2.8 liter. It's called the HR28TT. So it's used on some of the highest levels of road racing, and it's used in so many other things. The sand rails, the dune buggies, Baja bugs. All of those guys are either an LS or a J series.
Okay. So, all right. So I had a B18 C5. I moved to a K20 Z3 car, and I love to rev out the car. So my first real question is going to be, which J series can we easily massage to get into the 8,000 RPM range?
So that's the one area when people are shifting over to the J. These engines aren't as rev happy as a K20 or a B18 C5 for that matter. However, 7,000 RPMs is a very realistic number for a fairly stock J series.
Okay.
The most rev happy of the engines we have here in America is going to be a J32. It's 86 millimeter stroke with an 89 millimeter bore. So the stroke is not that aggressive. So the connecting rods handle the RPM quite well. The limiting factor we come to when we start going over 7,000 RPMs is just power. There's no point in revving if the power starts to drop off. And that's where things come into play, where we have like our hypercams that we offer, or the CNC cylinder head port that we offer as well too. Of course, that's where it starts to get a little more pricey. But what I can guarantee you is, a 7,000 RPM J series is going to smoke the K series engine that's revving to 8,500, right? So you won't miss the revs.
It's sweet music. That's literally I feel like it's the only limitation of a J series is my mental block over revving them out, right? But so they're everywhere. They're being used by everyone essentially. But let's talk about where we can find these engines first. You talked about going to the junkyard. So what'd they come in?
Okay, so a J series is literally Honda's V6 starting from like 98. You have a 98 to 2002 Accord was one of the earlier J series motors, and they're still running to current. The issue with the more current stuff is we have direct injection and stuff like that. So for the most part, we stay away from those if you're trying to do something on a budget. The most commonly used J series is going to be a J32A2, which comes in a 2001 to 2003 Acura CL Type S, or a 2002 to 2003 Acura TL Type S. Also, J35A4 is very popular, and that's in like a 2003 and 2004 Honda Odyssey or Honda Pilot. That one would be a 3.5 liter. Not as rev happy as the J32 because it increased stroke. We actually go to a 93 millimeter stroke there. And since it was in a minivan, I would say one of the weaker points on that motor is the connecting rod, because it was never really designed to rev high. They made the rods pencil thin just for maximum fuel economy.
Okay.
Gaining a lot of popularity though, right after we go to 2004, 2003 in the Honda world, 2004 in the Acura world, we switched to the monoport exhaust where we have a single exhaust manifold.
Okay.
A lot of guys are starting to swap those engines over as well, especially in the rear wheel drive platforms, because it's really easy to build a manifold. So we have, once we get to that style head, we have a lot of options. We can even go to 3.7 liters and do a J37. So we're not limited to 3.5 either.
Okay. Yeah. And there's 2 generations of that monoport manifold, right?
That's correct. We have the first generation of the monoport, which runs up to about 2008 roughly. That exhaust port is a little bit bigger than when we got to 2009 on the Acura side. We went to a little bit smaller exhaust port, and obviously Honda's chasing the emissions that they have to keep up with, but also they refined it to give the car a little bit more lower end power, a little more mid range, which obviously takes you a little bit further away from revving. So we generally don't use the 3rd generation exhaust port head as much as we use the 2nd generation one.
Okay. So if folks were going to swap, say, into a RX-8 or a Miata or something, right? Putting it in your sand dune buggy, right? That you're building some kit or pipe you have laying around and you want to design something that you can kill yourself in. How much do these engines typically weigh?
So a J series engine is right around like 300 pounds. Blocking heads, some of the accessories on it. I don't remember what a K series weighs off the top of my head, but last time I remember, it's probably like 75 pounds or so in that realm, heavier than a K series. They're aluminum block engines, so
okay,
they're not that heavy, Also, they do fit really well in the rear wheel drive platforms like an RX-8 because, being out it's only 3 cylinders, they're not actually that long of a motor.
Right. What's the V? Is it it's not a 90, it's like a 60, right?
It's a 60 degree.
60 degree. Yeah. Okay. So
which that also helps.
Yeah, it helps it fit in between the frame rails, and then since it's a V6, it's a little shorter, so lengthwise. Yeah. So okay. Yeah, let's see. So, all right. we'll talk the 32 and the 35 mostly, I guess. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but how easy is it? What's the bolt-on power look like out of a 32 and a 35?
Okay, so 32 and 35s are going to give us very similar horsepower.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just kind of like generalize as I speak. But with a correct setup and the proper bolt-ons in a front-wheel drive application, we can see right around 300 horsepower to the wheels.
Okay.
What I've seen from the rear-wheel drive applications is generally between like 270 to 280 area with a decent set of bolt-ons. And that's assuming you're using one of the better motors. What I mean by better engine is, since the J series is used in everything, when I mention a J32A2, you also have in that same year the base model, which is a J32A1, and that engine comes rated with like 40 to 50 horsepower less than a Type S model. It has slightly smaller ports, slightly smaller intake valves, a little bit less aggressive camshaft. And the J series customers literally just picking up whatever they find in the junkyard, and then they're like, oh, I'm going to swap this in. The market hasn't really narrowed down to, like, in the K series realm, use a K24A4 or a K20A2. You have the exact codes that people try to chase after. Many guys don't try to use the K24W or some of these other random K series.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the J world, people haven't really understood which were the best motors. So they're just grabbing whatever comes for cheap.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of codes, and in the Honda world, right? The folks at Garage Heroes in training, they love to tease me about, oh, you have an EG with a this and a that. And like, it's incessant. Honda did some of us a good service by giving us codes. Those of us that feel like our Hondas are now our new baseball cards, right? We can memorize the back of everything, right? We can memorize all these codes, but it's hard for the new people. So the new people are probably the ones that are just grabbing whatever,
Yeah, and there's so like the J35 is the one that has the most engine codes of all of them, because
mm-hmm.
you have from a J35A all the way up to like a J35A9. So right in there's like 10 different codes.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have J35Z, and J35Z has, I don't know if it goes all the way to a 9, but you have a J35Z1, a Z2, a Z3, Z4. Then you go to J35Y, which those have a bunch of numbers behind them as well too. J35Y1, J35Y2. So there's and they're all drastically different. The one thing though that does share in common is, if it's a J35A, those are kind of like the first generation, middle tier, second generation J series engines. The J35Z is where we start to convert over to what they consider R70 block, which has the crank trigger built inside of the oil pan on the crank itself. And the J35Y is just kind of their most refined J series of more recent. So like when you start to learn them, you'll be able to figure out the differences. But for swaps, if we're doing J35s, most people are going to stay in the A series. So J35A something.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And are they, if I have a J32, could I swap J35 heads on it and vice versa? Are they still interchangeable?
So for the most part, it's like any other Honda. These things are like Legos, right? Okay. You can mix and match. There are some things where all passages are different, but it's mostly a generation thing, not so much a J32 or J35 or even J37 thing. It's all about getting parts within the same generation. So the most commonly spoke about thing in like on the Facebook groups and stuff is guys say they want to put J32 heads on a J35. And the reason this is a popular thought process is because like the J35A4, which I mentioned is a really popular engine, has a 35 millimeter intake valve, whereas a J32A2 has a 36 millimeter intake valve. And but they're actually the same cylinder head casting. So the head ports are identical. The only difference is the camshaft that came in there and the intake valves. Just about everything else is the same. So a lot of guys are swapping them over, but they're technically swapping over the same thing. You can literally, if you're going to build your heads, you don't have to worry about which engine it came off of, right? If we're going to do a valve job here for you, we're going to just set it up for whatever it is you want to run.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to build the heads, instead of finding another set of heads to swap on, you can just have your head cut for the oversized valve, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just makes more sense. I don't know. To me, but maybe not to everybody. Or maybe they don't want to go through the hassle and they'd rather just slap it together. I don't know.
Yeah, well, there's too much misinformation on the internet with the J series, and the people are very vague with the word J35 or J32. Because I deal with it every day. I get a customer ask me, hey, which intake manifold runners do I need for my J35? And I have to do an email just to find out which J35 they have.
Right.
Because if they have a J35A, I have to sell them one set of runners. If they have a J35Z, I have to send them a different set. If they have a J35Y, I got to send them a completely different set. So I always have to find out, well, which J series do you have, so I know which parts you actually need.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah. So when a lot of guys are on the groups and they say, I have a J35, but I want to put J32 heads, sometimes they have one that is a completely different generation entirely. And they're just going off information that they read online where somebody said swap J32 heads on a J35. But they don't realize it doesn't even relate to their generation engine at all.
So we started talking the full bolt-ons, on the good motor, so the Type S or the essentially the higher compression stock motors, right?
Yeah.
Will net you between, say, 270 and 300, depending on which way you're orientating this engine in your car, whatever car it's going to be, right? So how do I ensure I get like 300 to 350? Or actually, before we go down that route, what are the good bolt-ons to start with?
So in a front-wheel drive application, well, in any application, you want to have a good header, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. You want to have a good 1 3/4 primaries on the header. And these engines generally like a 3-inch exhaust. In the front-wheel drive applications, they have like the eBay header that a lot of guys buy, but they only have 1.5 inch primaries on them. And that's actually smaller than the exhaust ports that's on the cylinder head itself. So a lot of guys are lacking horsepower right away with what they consider a performance header, but it's not really adding any performance to their vehicle. So we offer what we call our big 2 brace header, mm-hmm. which has 1.5 inch primaries. Then we go into a collector that brings us to 2.5. Then we merge into a single 3-inch. We don't offer a rear wheel drive header yet. So I just kind of mentioned all the tube sizes there. If you get something along those lines, it'd be really well. Then on the intake side of things, we do like the CNC ported lower intake manifold runners. The upper intake manifold, we have some performance options on our side, but the stock manifolds also do work well. And then putting a decent sized throttle body on there. I've seen a lot of success with 74 to 76 millimeter.
Okay.
So I'll go back to my road race Accord. My car with a stock J32A2, our CNC ported lower intake manifold, our CNC ported upper intake manifold, board throttle body, our big 2 brace header with a 3-inch exhaust, and we make around like 305, 306 on pump gas, like a 93 octane pump gas.
Okay. So, and for those that have the I guess they're Gen 2 and Gen 3, but the Gen 1, Gen 2 mono ports, what should they be? What kind of piping should they be using?
So for the monoport, you're going to want to use like 2.5 inch coming off of each cylinder head. And if you're merging to one, a single 3-inch exhaust back works really well. We have 3 different exhaust manifold starter options for those. We have a typical flat flange that, bolt up to the head and you just weld your tubing from there. We have a flange that converts oval to round. And then we also have our casted, we made some tight radius cast 316 stainless starter manifold flanges, which those are really nice because it converts it to round for you. It already points them down and they hug the engine really tight. They would actually be required for somebody like you want to put an engine in an RX-8, because when the engine fits between that frame rail, it is pretty tight. So we had to do a pretty tight radius to go down there. These were actually designed in an RX-8 J-swap.
Okay.
A buddy of mine named Adonis, he's trying to offer an RX-8 J-swap kit.
Okay.
He built the adapter plate for it. He has the J35A8, which is the monoport engine in his RX-8 right now.
Okay.
And it was designed around the clearance of that vehicle, of how tight we needed to swing those exhaust manifolds down to clear everything.
Yeah, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just trying to have fun in a cool car, right? Like, I know I'm not the first, but I'll reach out to you after the podcast, and I'll make sure I'm following them on Instagram. So,
yeah, I'll put you in onto his page because he does have pictures of it, and he shares a lot of progress. His car's not actually, I don't believe his car's actually running. He's just been more using it for development because he wants to at some point offer a plug and play kit for the RX.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I would assume like you'd need mounts and all this other stuff made up and things like that.
Yeah, and I believe he has all of that already designed. I think we're going to be the one doing all the manufacturing for it.
Okay.
Once he irons out the last few pieces. Because we have a pretty good relationship, and he's really good. He does a good job. He's trying to be very thorough on everything to make it a nice kit.
So say we want to get spicy. We got full bolt-ons and, we need a little more juice. Let's talk cams for a second. And when you do cams, what's required? Like, is there a cam setup for these cars where the stock springs can be used?
Yeah. So we have our Hyper Series cam that, it's been in development for many years. Last year, we released the Hyper Stage 1. I think just the beginning of this year, we released our Hyper Stage 2. So the Hyper Stage 1 is going to be good for about a 17 to 19 horsepower pickup over the best J Series cam. In our situation, we compared it to like a J37A1 or a J35A8, which was the best of all the OEM cams. Doesn't need any springs, doesn't need any retainers. It can actually work as a true drop-in. You just pull your rockers off, slide the cam in, and put your rockers back on, and you got an almost 20 horsepower pickup right there. When we get into our Stage 2 cam, that's where you do have to get a spring package. We have a couple different options there. We have Super Tech, we got Ferreira, I got Pro Race Valve. So we have some really good options ranging from like a 75 pound spring seat pressure all the way up to 100 pound. 100 pounds more like the drag race guys, but we have all those options available. The Hyper Stage 2, I recently dynoed in my drag race car, but it's an M1 car, so it's on methanol M1, and we're at 400 horsepower to the wheels. We dynoed 396, I believe, but we were doing third gear pulls. The 1-to-1 ratio is in fourth gear on these transmissions, and we just weren't doing it in fourth gear just because we get such a high mile an hour, and the way the car was strapped on a dyno is just kind of a little bit iffy.
Yeah, trust me, I get it. Okay. So you can pick up, 20 or so horsepower with some cams. You may or may not need to go get some valve springs, but what are some of the wild street cars, like NA street builds, that you've seen or done, because you guys build engines there. So, say I want compression, ported heads, and a cam. Is that what you're running in your drag car?
Yeah, so my drag car, it's essentially, my drag car is a 3.7 liter. But it's basically our CNC ported cylinder head package that we offer with the Hyperstage 2 cam and a set of high compression pistons and rods. That car I'm trying to get to, essentially to try to get to 430 to 440 horsepower. That's ultimately the goal. Right now we've been experimenting with the single port head to see how far we can get that. But ultimately, we will be going to the 3-port head because we know our maximum horsepower is going to be there. The monoport head for simple setups and, your basic street cars are very efficient. They do work really well. Even right out of the box, they make a little bit more horsepower than the 3-port heads. Like if you look at Acura TL from like 2003 to 2004, when they switched from the 3-port to the monoport, the horsepower actually went up. It's not because of the exhaust port, it's just because of other refinements Honda did to the engine. But in a nutshell, they're very refined. And to answer your question, we can get you to 350-ish horsepower for a street car. With a cylinder head build, essentially. Stock bottom end, built heads. From there, if you're really trying to get beyond that, we do have to start getting a little bit more into the compression and maybe have to consider other fuels.
Okay. I think that's plenty, right? So you get a 3,000-pound rear-wheel drive car and you drop 300, 350 horsepower. What kind of torque are we talking? They're not 1-to-1 on the torque values, are they?
No. So a 3.2 liter generally see between 235 to 250-ish torque. 3.5 liters generally see like 260, 270, even 280 on a good motor, Whereas the 3.7 liters start knocking on 300 foot-pounds of torque. And these are all numbers I'm speaking with just pump gas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're making me think about a 3.7 instead of 3.2 just on big numbers by itself, but tires are I hate tires, so it's fine. So let's talk about some of the limitations of the physical engine or the engine itself for the J series. What have you guys run into in the development, and then what have you guys worked on to get around the limitations of this engine?
So the biggest limitation is going to be that it's a single overhead cam engine. And the way that Honda designed it, this motor doesn't have actual cam caps like you have on a B series or even a K series for that matter. So the camshaft has to slide into the cylinder head. And they just didn't give us a lot of room to increase the cam lobes. So when you start to grind the back side of the cam to increase lift and you throw off that base circle, you start to get some weird valve angle geometry where the valve doesn't sit square on the rocker anymore. It starts to kind of press on the side of it. And it takes a lot of engineering work to get a properly designed cam. And I think that's what took us so many years to get that Hyperstage 2 cam to work really well. It's literally the biggest cam you're going to get in there without doing like a line bore on the cylinder head. And that's actually what's going to take us to our Stage 3 cam, which is going to be a cylinder head that requires a full line bore with a cam that's actually bigger from the ground up. Also, since it's a single cam, and not to try to get too technical, but you have your center line on your camshaft. So basically, when your intake cam starts to open, or your intake valve starts to open, versus when your exhaust valve starts to open, and when you regrind the cam, sometimes if you start to advance your exhaust center line and you retard your intake center line, or you advance your intake center line as well, even if you had adjustable cam gear, there's no way to center them both up. Whenever you adjust it, you're adjusting both the intake and the exhaust.
Right.
So you have to kind of find that medium where both sides are happy enough to make the most power. So what we had to do when we're designing the cam is try to figure out the best intake center line we wanted, and then find the best exhaust center line that we wanted. So that way, a cam gear is not really that required anymore to make the power. And then, just a small refinement in there if need be. And that's why we also have adjustable cam gears as well. But our cam is very, very refined. So it actually almost doesn't even need the adjustable cam gear. But a lot of regrinds that are on the market would benefit from our cam gear, but you still have to find that medium because you're adjusting both intake and exhaust together.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a gigantic D series in that respect, right?
Yeah. In that respect, yeah, it's like that. And then the only other limitation I would say on the engines, but it's easily covered, it's going to be the connecting rods. As I mentioned, these were all about fuel economy. And because of that, Honda just made the rods pencil thin. It's not so much of an issue in like a NA car that's around 300 horsepower, right? You're not going to break the rod unless you're trying to extremely rev the engines too far. But with force induction, I mean, I guess it's not even that bad. But once you get to like 450 horsepower, you start seeing that limitation on the connecting rods. A lot of guys will tell you they made 600 horsepower, 550 horsepower, but they don't hold together for long before the rod flies out of the block,
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of little things, but we've been able to get around a lot of the other stuff. So yeah, that would be my top two on the list of far as limitations go.
Okay. So for the road race guys, are there tricks for like oil pumps? Are there baffled oil pans that they need to worry about? Stuff like that.
So the oil pumps work really well on these engines. You don't have to swap them out to anything better. They work really well. Even when you start to increase the RPM limiter on them, the stock oil pumps work really good. A baffled oil pan does help these engines a lot. When we first started road racing, when we were running the NASCAR banking at Homestead Speedway, sometimes my car would go into limp mode because I was starved of oil. And like I said, that was my very early days before I knew a lot about engines. We didn't have baffle oil pan or anything like that.
Right.
And the car would literally go into limp mode coming off the banking, and then it would see the oil pressure again, and then everything would work fine. So we worked at Moroso on doing some baffled oil pans, and that completely solved that issue. There's options for welding in baffles and things like that. But I mean, it's all, that's pretty much it. The oil pumps work great, and just a baffle in the oil pan, and then they're pretty much ready to go road racing.
Okay. And I've fully graduated to this timing chain life, and I thoroughly enjoy it. But these engines still have belts, right?
Yes, all the J series are timing belt engines. They hold up really well. The belts, the factory is a hydraulic tensioner.
Mm-hmm.
They do start to go bad, obviously, over time. We offer a manual tensioner option, which very simple to use, and it helps maintain, belt tension, and it also makes it a lot easier for the install. I think Honda loves the belt, believe it or not, because when they developed the TLX Type S and they did the dual overhead cam J series now, they decided to keep that with a belt as well, and that engine even has VTC. Yes,
that was the other thing. It doesn't have the VTC change like the K series. It's almost, maybe I'm nostalgic for my old CRX, but it really seems like a V6D series. But the power per liter is way better than the D series was putting out. So
yeah, the ports, it is like a D series, but the ports are bigger than a D series ports, and that's why we're getting more power.
Okay.
Right. Also, the valves are bigger than D series valves as well too.
Okay.
So we are getting a lot more air in each cylinder than a D series would get. But as far as the simplicity of the design, it is very similar. The engines are very easy to work on. I think most entry level mechanics or can just jump into a J series and very easily see how everything works. You know, there's no VTC to worry about. Like we mentioned, it's a belt. If you use things like our manual tensioner, and it's just very, very simple. You know, I could take apart, which I have videos on my YouTube channel. I can just take all the rocker assemblies, just completely take all the pins of it all, just drop it on the table and reassemble it all back in 30 minutes, you know?
Yeah.
They're very simple. So it makes it a very good choice for a lot of guys that are doing a lot of racing. Not that they have to come apart often because the motors are very reliable, but when you do have to go in and do something, you know, you can almost just look at it and know what you need to do. You know?
Right. So, okay. Can you give me let's say an ultimate 300 horsepower rear wheel drive build from the engine code to the bolt-ons and then what we need to do, you know, to get 300 out of a rear wheel drive J series?
So the easiest route, I would say, for that, there's two ways to do it. If we did it with the first generation engines, so a 3-port motor, you definitely want to start with a Type S, a 3.2, or well, actually, I guess the question is, how deep do you want to go in to get to that 300 horsepower? You want to just bolt-ons, or you want us to just refresh a motor a little bit? Obviously not touching the bottom end, but like, are you looking at any sort of cylinder head work, or are we just
let's do it without cylinder head work. Let's just do as much bolt-ons as we can get our hands on.
All right. So I would say a good option would be like a J35A8, which comes out in the 2007, 2008 Acura TL Type S.
Okay.
My motor is rated at 285 horsepower from Honda, or 286, somewhere in that area. Build a decent exhaust manifold and exhaust system. Ported intake, bigger throttle body, and you're knocking on 300 horsepower if not hitting it.
And that,
right?
And then if we get disappointed on the dyno, we call you up for a stage 1 cam to push us over the top.
Correct. You're unhappy with if you didn't quite hit the number, you know,
okay,
you can drop in a stage 1 cam, or you can send us the heads. We can do a nice little refresh, because then, you know, we're talking junkyard engine here. We'll cut a nice 3-angle valve job, resurface the cylinder head, slide in the cam, and send you back, and now you're guaranteed over 300.
Okay. I'm down. I'm already spending money for a car I don't have, but you know, whatever. We'll work on that.
So yeah, that would be the most easy way about it. Now, that J35A8 is the round Bellhausen motor. So you'd have to make sure when you're getting your adapter plate, you get for the Gen 2 Bellhausen instead of the Gen 1 Bellhausen. Once you're on a Gen 2 Bellhausen, you do have the options for like a J37A1 as well. J37A1 from a 2007 to 2009 Acura MDX will share more or less the same cylinder head as a J35A8, but you'll be 3.7 liters.
Okay. One thing maybe I'm coming back to too late, but what are the fuel demands of these engines? Are stock injectors generally enough, or?
For 300 horsepower, stock injectors are just fine.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, stock injectors work great as long as you're staying on pump gas, right? Really, and I mentioned, I know you're into road racing, so but so many guys now are running E85 that it's just in my thought process. If you're going 85, you need a bigger injector.
Right. Yeah.
If you're
My rules don't allow E85, and I doubt I'd E85 a street car, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about fueling, because I've definitely ignored it before in other engine episodes. And I think you can run out of an injector in a K series without going to E85. So
yeah, no, the J series, that stock injector will get you to that 300 horsepower, and you'll stick a set of our fuel rails on there because you're going to need to convert over to like an AN fuel system anyways, just to match it up to your vehicle, right? Because when you're doing a rear wheel drive swap, whatever vehicle it was, you have to get from whatever connectors they have on the fuel system there over to this motor. It's just easier to go with an AN fuel line setup, and can easily build you a little plug and play line kit, and you get it all connected with a regulator.
Well, I don't know if I have any more questions. Do you have anything we need to share specifically with the J series?
So I would say for me, the J series is going to be the easiest Honda motor to get you to 300 horsepower, right? It's not the most commonly used engine yet. The K series, I would say, obviously reigns supreme there, but they don't get to 300 horsepower without going extreme, right? So a J series can get you to 300 horsepower on a budget, and that's its own enemy at the same time. Because it gets you to 300 horsepower on a budget, we generally get a lot more budget orientated customers who don't really want to do much, or don't really want to or consider the price on a lot of the stuff to just be outrageous, because they're just looking at budget friendly options. So that's a good and a bad thing in my mind for the J series, right? Once you get into engine builds, the J starts to get a little bit more expensive than the K series, because you have 2 more cylinders to work with, right?
Yep.
So when you look into, let's say, a valve spring package, instead of 16, you need 24. And it starts to add up pretty quickly,
Yeah, you need more valves, you need more pistons, you need more rods.
8 more valves, 8 more retainers,
Yeah.
Is that 16 more locks? 8 more spring seats, 2 more pistons, 2 more sets of rings, 2 more rods, like you mentioned, So it's just naturally going to be a little bit more expensive when you get into the builds. So 300 horsepower, way cheaper than a K series. You start going up into the builds, then yes, now you can start debating, is the J more expensive than a K? And most times going to be yes.
Well,
but we can reap bigger results.
Yes. And right now, I surf the junkyard listings. I've surfed Facebook Marketplace. I've looked on your website for, you have all those blocks ready to go. You have heads ready to go. Okay. To be honest, I would probably get things going with some junkyard engine, get everything mocked up, and then I would just take my time building something, right? Like, go get the nice stuff, get it ready, make sure your car's running, and then you can build an engine over time. You don't have to build it tomorrow, So.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of this engine. You can get one from the junkyard, and you can get to 300 horsepower, pretty quickly. So you can be happy with the setup. And for that reason, we do a lot of accessories for the engine, right? Because number one thing is, does the engine look good in the vehicle, right? And that's a big factor. So in a rear-wheel drive platform, we've released a lot of parts that just simplifies how the motor looks really nice. I'm sure you've seen a lot of the pictures on our Instagram.
Oh yeah.
We've converted what was just a bland looking V6 into, very customizable now. We have different color options and, all the billet cam caps and all sort of stuff. Oh, and one thing that it made me remember is the one area that scared a lot of people with the J series is the height of the engine.
Mm-hmm.
So, do I have to cut my hood? The good thing is that we have like the low profile intake manifolds now that we're able to clear the hood, but still maintain horsepower. If you look at a lot of the Miata J swaps, some of them were using the stock manifold. They were kind of did like a weird plenum where they only go off to one side, because the throttle body being the furthest point of the car forward, that's generally the area where you hit the hood, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they brought the throttle body closer to the firewall per se, where the hood is still higher. But it just completely robs horsepower. So you'll see a lot of those guys making like 220, 230 horsepower, and it's just because of how bad their manifold design is. We've solved that with the intake manifold that we released. I think we call it our high performance CNC ported intake manifold. And that allows us to sit the manifold really low and clear the hood on pretty much all the rear wheel drive platforms that we've tried on so far.
And on the front wheel drive platform, the throttle body goes over the transmission, right? So is it uniform? You can flip the manifold and have it go out the front?
Yeah, so to flip the intake manifold, all you have to do is basically take for rear wheel drive, it's a left and a right cylinder head, right? Mm-hmm. So you take the lower intake manifold from the right head and you put it on the left head. You take the one from the left head and you put it on the right head, and now the manifold installs backwards.
Okay.
Yeah, both cylinder heads on a J series are symmetrical, so you can take the front cylinder head and put it on the rear. The only difference is the direction that the camshaft goes in.
Okay.
They're the same cylinder head, so the lower manifold runners can just flip. And front wheel drive cars, some of them do bring it out to the passenger side over the timing belt. A lot of the turbo guys do that, so they can come out the passenger side into their intercooler, and then and back to the other way. So yeah, you can just flip them really easily.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So anything else we need to know?
No, just go to the junkyard and find a motor.
Or, go to powerrevracing.com. Where can everybody find you guys?
Yeah, so just like you said, powerrevracing.com is the website, but it's also all of our social media handles. If it's YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all of them is Power Rev Racing. Like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I have over 300 brand new assembled short blocks from Honda. I got hundreds of cylinder heads. We keep tons of inventory here, from time belt kits, all the internal components, pistons, rods, cams, valve train, all the billet accessories. Anything you think of J series, we have it, and we pretty much have it in stock ready to ship.
Awesome, Sean. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing about the J series engine.
Yep, no, I appreciate you having me. And if you ever have any other questions that pop up in the future, I'll always be available to jump on again.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
Until next time, keep working on yourself, keep working on the car, and let's get faster.